ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Okay, so welcome everyone to the second topic of the series. Yesterday we discussed about discovering leadership principles from the life of Arjuna, and primarily we had focused on Arjuna getting into crisis right at the beginning of the battlefield, and from that scenario we drew around 7 principles or 7 leadership sutras for ourselves to reflect on for the rest of the year and keep in mind and see how we progress on that direction. So, Arjuna's crisis allowed Krishna to speak Bhagavad Gita. And because that, we have this wisdom with us, which Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita as the most ancient science of yoga. And through Arjuna, we all have got an opportunity to learn from this timeless wisdom. So today, for today's session, I'm just going to take one of the concepts, incredibly beautiful and a scientific concept. I'm pretty sure you're all going to be amazed if in case you have not heard about it, read about it before. And it's one of my favorite topics from Bhagavad Gita. That is 3 modes of nature and how it affects the personality and the leadership model for that reason. So in general, there are 2 types of attitudes. One is reactive and second is proactive. Reactive attitude or personality is good for short-term goals, has a good firefighting skills, but they're very poor in organizational as well as in strategic planning. Whereas the proactive individuals are at times considered more advantageous than the reactive attitude or personality, because proactive people, they not only are aware of the present, but they are preparing for the future. And when you're working in the world out, maybe for a personal life or in the professional life, we all have an experience. Things changes very fast. And if you don't keep a track of our life and track of the things happening around us, we might become out of place, out of sync, and whatnot. So let us consider these 2 attitudes or personality types with 2 case studies that I would like to bring to your attention. The first case study is of Nokia's CEO, Stephen Elop. This was one of my favorite companies back in those days when I was studying in college, back in 2002, 2003. You know, it had this Nokia 5530, 55310 model. It was so solid and so robust. We used to do is testing. We'll go to the 4th floor of our hostel and we used to throw the mobile from the 4th floor, and it was so damn sturdy it would never break. So this was a kind of a mobile they used to make, and literally there was no other company. Everyone had Nokia handset. Then came 2005, a slight disruptor was Motorola that brought Moto Razr, the first flip phone. And that was such a style statement from Motorola like that. Anyways, from having a market share for almost literally 70 to 80%, maybe more than that, contributing to more than 30% to the GDP of Finland, if I remember correctly, something happened to this company, and Stephen Elop in 2013 fired 25,000 employees in Finland. The company, which was valued at more than $54 billion by 2009, 2010, by 2013 was purchased by Microsoft for less than $8 billion. For you and I, $8 billion is a lot of money. But if you understand the valuation from $50+ billion coming down to $8 billion, it's a huge, huge, tremendous loss. And at that point of time, in a press conference, Stephen Elop, Nokia's CEO, he made a statement. He had tears in his eyes. He cried in the press conference. He said, "We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost." And when management grew, a famous personality back in America, he said, they missed out on learning, they missed out on changing, and thus they lost the opportunity at hand to make it big. Not only did they miss the opportunity to earn big money, they lost their chance of survival. What happened? Suddenly Nokia went out of business. Prior to Nokia went out of business, one of my dream company to really work was BlackBerry. the first corporate smartphone, the first smartphone and the first corporate device, if ever launched by any company, was BlackBerry around 2004, 2005. And by 2009 and 2010, it literally went bankrupt. And then it moved to Android and whatnot, things dried out. And eventually, 3 years later on the line, Nokia had to shut down its office. Why? What happened suddenly? Why these giants lost not only their market share, they lost the whole business. So in 2007, something happened. Jan 9, 2007, Steve Jobs, after maintaining a 6 months of secrecy, announced an Apple conference. Every year he would have an Apple conference, and this time decided to have it in the January 9th. And after 6 months of tremendous hard work by him and by his team, who had many departments and all that, I'm not going into details of it, he announced a press conference and he wanted to launch a new, sensational, disruptive technology and product, the first ever smartphone. And he came onto the stage, he spoke about the technology, he spoke about the device, and he started the demo. He picked up the phone and he started touching it. And unfortunately, nothing happened. The product failed right in the first launch. Steve Jobs didn't give up, and around 5 minutes down the line, I believe it's around June or July, he called up for another conference. Generally, it will have an annual conference. He called up for another conference. At that time, in 2007, the first smartphone, the touchscreen device, was launched. And the moment iPhone was launched, everything sooner or later went out of market. A year later, Android operating system came into the market, and so forth. That's the rest of the story. So point here is, I just want to highlight a little bit about how Steve Jobs, who had nothing to do with mobile industry, he was not into the mobile hardware. He was making hardware and software. He was making iPods and maybe animation movies and whatnot. How did he end up in mobile business? This is what it means by proactive mindset. 2005, 2 years back, 2005, he entered his office and he saw one of his employees fiddling with one gadget. And he was just walking, he happened to see it and he said, "Oh, what is this device?" So in 2005, early 2005, a small company, just a startup, has launched a device for blind people to help blind people interact with computer through the touch, just to facilitate for the blind people to interact and write, particularly to communicate by writing through touch screen. And that employee was fiddling around with the device. The moment Steve Jobs saw it, he didn't see that device. He saw the opportunity awaiting it. He saw and he thought, if through touch screen, if the blind people just by the touch of the finger can communicate with the computer and can communicate with the world, what about if we create a technology and a device just by touch screen without a keypad? I can type in, I can speak and whatnot. And that's how the idea for iPhone took birth in the mind or in the head of Steve Jobs. This is called as proactive in case of Stephen Elop. Despite seeing the trend of the market changing, 2007, fast forward 2013, good 7 years, yet they could not launch even a single smartphone. They kept on hanging on to their old Symbian operating system. They kept on firefighting, but they didn't realize where the future is going to. So that's the difference between reactive and proactive mindset or style of leadership. So why do people react differently? Here Steve Jobs had an opportunity, had a situation, reacted in one way. Stephen Elop, although he saw the market trend changing, yet he did not change or he did not react to it. So once a Socrates, a famous philosopher, Greek philosopher if I'm correct, he would sit down with his friends and have a long conversations, philosophical discussion. His wife was a little short-tempered. Once Socrates was having a discussion with his friends, his wife walked into the room and she screamed at the top of her voice, "You nonsense, you useless fellow, you do no work, no business, sitting whole day, you keep talking, and you have this useless friends along with you, get out of my house," something like she blurted, and she walked away. Socrates didn't respond, reacted. He remained as it is, he continued with his conversation, but the friends were feeling a little anxiety and stress. They were not sure when would the wife will come back and chastise them now again. So seeing that the friends are a little disturbed, the Socrates decided, let's go out of the house in the park right opposite. We'll sit and spend some time and talk, have philosophical discussion. They came out of the house. Socrates turned around to lock the door, and suddenly there was a heavy downpour only on the head of Socrates. Everyone was shocked. Everyone looked up, and there was the wife of Socrates. She had a bucket full of water which she poured on top of Socrates' head. Now everyone was frozen. Everyone was looking at Socrates. How would Socrates respond to such a situation? As Socrates said, he responded. And what did he say? He said, "Some time ago it was thundering, and now it's raining. That's all." What a cool response. So, why do people react differently? Let me give you one simple example for you to reflect upon. Have you experienced for yourself, you're traveling and you get stuck in a traffic jam? In one situation, when you're stuck in a traffic jam, you seem frustrated, you get angry. In another occasion, you give a different response. You really don't bother about if there is a traffic or not. You're lost in your conversation or you're lost into whatever you're listening to. So how many of you agree? Just to a similar situation in different times, we give different reactions. Not only that, different people to different situation at the same time react differently. It's a question to be asked and raised here. Why do we all react differently in a similar situation? And more importantly that, why do I react differently in a similar situation in different times? How does it function? How does it work? So that brings us to the second part of the discussion. So far was an introduction to this topic. What determines our response? To help you understand this concept, I'll give you a quick example, a story of a cap seller. There were three brothers by the name of Sattu, Rajju, Tamo. All three of them had a common business. वो लोगों को टोपी पहनाया करते थे. I'm just joking. I mean to say they were the cap seller. So every day they'll pack a sack of bag, they'll walk across different parts of the city or the town, cross over the forest, go to the village and sell their cap. So this particular day, all three of them walked into three different directions. And their wives would pack a lunch somewhere around by 12 o'clock. They would stop by in a forest somewhere under the shade of a tree. They will have their lunch and then they'll take a nap for some time and they'll continue to the business. Interestingly, something happened to them, all three of them, this particular day. Where they stopped in a forest in that particular area, all three of them are in unique position, unique places, have no connection with each other. And that area of the forest was infested with monkeys. They had a lot of monkeys over there. And when these three cap sellers, Sattu, Rajju, Tamo, went to sleep and they woke up, for utter surprise to each one of them, the caps were missing. Their day's livelihood is gone. How would they return back? They would have nothing to give back. In fact, they have lost everything. The question is, how would these three brothers react? Or how did they react? So let's take a quick survey of how did they react. Let's start with the Tamo. And you can reply yes or no if you relate with this kind of a reaction response within yourself, or else if you have seen people reacting like this. So Tamo, who was the youngest of all, when he woke up from his nap and he saw his caps were missing, he started cursing himself, he started cursing the world, he started saying, I'm always a victim, why this bad things happen to me, there's no purpose of living, I should commit suicide. He began to cry, nothing doing. He just was blaming, finding faults with others, why every time me and all that. Didn't do anything about recovering the caps. He went to the pub or bar, drank some alcohol and forgot about life and moved on. Sounds familiar? People who talk too much about victim or victimhood. Then the second brother, Rajju, he got up, he saw the caps were missing. He became so angry. He looked around, he saw the monkeys, they had stolen the caps. He started abusing, he started hurling abusive words. He looked around the stones and started throwing stones at them. And the monkeys are pretty fast. They jumped from one branch to another. He did not manage to get even a single cap, cursing monkeys, cursing himself. He walked away frustrated. Sounds familiar probably? And here's the response of Sattu, the eldest brother. He got up and when he saw the caps were missing and the monkeys had stolen the cap, he paused for a second and he reflected, how do I deal with this? And then he realized the monkeys are good imitator. He had his cap, which he had kept in his upper pocket. He took out the cap from his upper pocket. He waved in the sky like this and threw the cap. Monkeys were good imitator. All the monkeys threw the cap. He went, collected all the caps and went on for his business, like as if nothing ever happened. So these are three different kind of responses for a similar situation. Teaches two very important lessons. First, We may not have control on the situation, but our response. And second, for every stimuli, there is a response, but how do we respond to it is what is called as responsibility. So it's a very interesting concept. Stimuli and response. For every stimuli and for every response, there is a space, and that space between every stimuli and response lies our freedom for growth or for destruction of one's life in that way. So what you use the word, we often say responsibility, which means the ability to respond properly. So what would be a proactive response and what is a reactive response in that case? Proactive response means action based on chosen values, whereas reactive means allowing the stimulus to dictate your response in the case of Tamo and the Rajo. And what is a proactive response of the Sattva? Action based on chosen values. Yesterday we were talking about Dronacharya being guru for Arjuna and Krishna being guru for Arjuna. What was the difference? One taught secular education, the skills, proficiency, and one taught spiritual education, how to use it in terms of intention, the principles, and the values. So Krishna gave value-based education and Dronacharya gave skill-based education. But when it was the hour of the need, Arjuna forgot that. He didn't know how to use the skills, and that's the time values were needed. So value-based life. This is an example of Arjuna turning his face away from Urvashi, and Urvashi is cursing because Arjuna is not entertaining the proposal of Urvashi. So an opportunity to enjoy, but what is the response based on chosen values? He says, no, this is inappropriate conduct. And here we have Jayadratha, raised up in secular education, but hardly have value-based education, and he doesn't know really how to act, and he's here grabbing someone else's wife. He wants to abduct Draupadi. So that's what the difference between, in fact, Draupadi is not even interested. So that's what it means by reacting based on values and reacting based on stimulus, proactive versus reactive. So moving forward, what determines our response? And that's where the beauty of Bhagavad Gita comes. Lord Shri Krishna talks about 3 psychological states known as Sattva Guna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna. Let's take a look at it. Sattva Guna. Sattvam rajastama iti guna prakriti sambhavaha nibadnanti mahabahu dehe dehinam avyayam. So Krishna is saying, material nature, this world consists of 3 modes: goodness, passion, ignorance. Everything about us, about our personality, the way we think, the way we talk, the way we dress, the kind of food we eat, the kind of movies we watch, the kind of songs we hear, the kind of sports we enjoy, everything about us, everything is influenced by the psyche called as Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. So Krishna says these 3 modes permeates everything. The whole environment, everything about us is determined by these 3 modes. So how do modes affect our responses? In goodness, somebody who has majority of goodness in his psyche, or has a stronger proponent of goodness, such a person would always do a calm analysis before reacting. Passion, such a person is always running with agitated mind. He wants to act quickly, even without thinking. In case of ignorance, such a person enjoys doing no action. Lethargy, panic, confusion, fear is a state of response of somebody who has predominance of ignorance or ignorant psyche. So let's take a look at quality of goodness a little bit quickly here. So quality of goodness, one who has predominance of goodness, the psyche of goodness, this is how he would be living his life, this is how he would be reacting. One is in knowledge, peaceful and happy, can see things in the right perspective, discern between right and wrong, moral and immoral. He has a calm, clear and creative thinking. This helps one to find an effective solution to life's problem. Remember Sattva, the capsular example? Quality of passion, such a person is attached to prestige, too greedy, over ambitious, at times unreasonable. Workaholic suddenly wakes up to see himself at the edge of burnout, and not only alcoholic, also sexaholic, Krishna says about it. He's envious, competitive, hasty, selfish, money-minded, and too attached to sensual pleasures. This is all from the 14th and the 17th and the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Pick it up and you can read for more details. Such a person finds very difficult to stay focused for long. Quality of ignorance, He enjoys sleeping. Such a person just doesn't want to do anything. Such a person is expert. He has double PhD in giving excuses. Excuse and excuse and excuse. He is a master excuse maker. Oversleeps, lazy and crazy, indulges in self-abusive acts. He is a good in postponing everything, depressed, lonely, confused, panic, insecure, fearful, and always dependent on others for his happiness. He believes right to be wrong and wrong to be right. Let's summarize the subject matter of three modes to help you understand. Many people are getting up for celebrating the first anniversary of Ram Lala Pran Pratishtha, like that. So we'll give an example from Ramayana. There were three brothers who represent these three modes. They were not living in Ayodhya, they were living in Lanka, which means refers to Kumbhakaran, Vibhishan, and Ravana. So I believe you can quickly guess. Ravana represents mode of passion, Kumbhakaran represents mode of ignorance, and Vibhishan, mode of goodness. So if you remember these three examples, I guess you got it covered. So how do leaders function in the three modes? When a leader is situated in ignorance, as ignorance is identified by lazy, crazy, oversleepy, such a people really cannot do anything. You want to move anything, nothing can move. Even if there is something running, operations going on, they would eventually stop. Everything comes to a halt. He feels tired all over. His fatigue is mixed with nervousness, tension, anxiety. And if in case you have such a person as a manager, you really cannot grow in your life. You cannot make any progress. In fact, you will undergo depression. Often there's a sense of low self-esteem, driven by insecurity, and life feels like a burden. He feels undesirable moods, negative thoughts, becomes dependent on drug and alcohol, just to let go of life's problems or to forget life situations. And for such individuals, depression may be triggered or may become worsened. What about leaders in passion? They're workaholic. So not only they work, they often the people when you're signing out from the office, they come and tell you, oh, you're going? Just came and you're leaving now? Now the day starts for you. And you're like, oh my goodness, this man never leaves me. So such people who are workaholic, they often become insensitive to the needs of others. They work and they make others work. Let me talk about Steve Jobs. So when he was working for launching about iPhone, and there was such a secrecy was maintained, nobody knew what's going on. And he had different departments handling different parts of iPhone manufacturing for that purpose. And for 6 months, all the employees who were part of this R&D department, they were not allowed to leave the office. The employees were working in the office, employees were sleeping in the office. 6 months straight that happened. And what happened? Yes, the iPhone was launched, a disruptive product was launched in the market. However, what was the end product? Well, something came good for the society, but many of these people lost their family. Many of these people got divorced. You can go and search for it. You'll find many such case studies. People cursing Steve Jobs for making them, pushing them, working so hard, so much so that when their wife was pregnant, about to give a birth, he did not allow them to leave the office. And the family members got frustrated, and many of them got divorced because of it. Stress-driven mood generally have a high sense of energy, high level of stress. They impatiently push themselves on others, always trying to push others to do things. Moderate to severe level physical tension, and insensitive. What about goodness? They're active, highly active, but they have a greater control on their emotions. They are good in inspiring others, encouraging others, but they don't cross the boundary. They maintain a good level of stress, but do not overstress others. Feels low tension, high energy, feels remarkably serene and under control. Optimistic, have a great presence of mind, and often peaceful. So these are some of the qualities. Mental, physical reserves are high. They have best combination of healthy vitality, and there is less struggle, which means less wear and tear. How I think, speak, and act will depend on how I endeavor to give up. Vairagya chagrihate. Krishna says, give up. We have to give up two things. Remember this formula. First, we have to give up the attachment to wrong things, and we have to give up the aversion to right things. Let's quickly take a look at what is right thing and bad thing. Let's talk about the right things. So this is mode of goodness lifestyle. Diet, dress, environment, and association. Sattvic diet, fresh diet, vegetarian diet, fruits, milk, cereals, vegetables, sattvic diet. The more we increase the proportion of this, the more it affects our body as well as our psyche, and more we cultivate goodness. Sattvic dress, simple dress, not too flashy, not too expensive, neat and clean, not the jeans which people often don't wash for 6 months stretch. I don't know in India, but this is what people used to do in America. College students, I don't want to tell too many things about them. They were a little too dirty. Forget about jeans, they will not wash many other things also. No. Anyways, so sattvic dress means wearing fresh piece of cloth and neat and clean and not provocative. Sattvic environment, just like these days, people are living in the city, but each one of them prefer to go to some kind of a forest outing or a trek, being in the nature. That is what called a sattvic environment, creating that kind of a setup. You can create a sattvic environment within your house also. For that, you can contact us for details. Sattvic association, company of saintly people, those who have this mode of goodness. Like this, if we keep these things, if we take of these few items in our life, we will cultivate more of goodness. What are the things? Aversion to bad things. Sorry, aversion to good things. What are the attachment to bad things that we have? I will not disclose those things right now at this point of time. I would like all of you to reflect, because everyone knows what is right and wrong. If you ever go and buy a cigarette, and cigarette pack says if you smoke it, your lungs will get into lung cancer and whatnot. Alcohol, dangerous to health. So it's not that we don't know what is right and wrong. So I would let you for a second right now, rather than me spoon feeding everything, why don't you take a second, take a pen and paper, write down what are the wrong things and how am I attached to them, or it's easy for me to let go. That's how we make a transition of our life. So Krishna says, beautiful words, if you can recite along with me, please do so. Raga dvesha vimuktastu vishayan indriyascharan atma vashir vidhiyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Raga and dvesha, attachments and repulsion. Vimuktas, give up both the things. Vishayan indriyascharan atma vashir vidhiyatma, one who can control oneself, refrain oneself from too much indulgence in sense objects. Prasadam adhigacchati. People go to the temple asking for blessings. Krishna is giving blessing right here in this verse. One who can live a disciplined life, he would attain, he would receive my prasadam, which means my mercy. But a person free from all attachment and aversion, unable to control his senses, through regulatory principles of freedom, can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So when it comes to yoga, the science of yoga, as Krishna is speaking about in Bhagavad Gita, it involves application. We got to act upon it. It's not only about telling others, we need to do it. Just like yoga in the form of exercise, Hatha Yoga, you can't just tell people do Hatha Yoga and be healthy. You got to do it for yourself to be healthy. Similarly, the science of yoga, we got to practice in our life to transform our mindset, to change our perceptions, and to change modes of consciousness. So we started our discussion by quoting an example of Steve Jobs and Stephen Ullup of Proactive Reactive. I would like to conclude my session today by sharing another case study of this proactive and reactive attitude. This is a research study conducted by a group of psychologists. They were looking for twins, and they finally found these twin brothers whose father was an alcoholic, and they observed these twins for almost over a span of 10 plus years to see when they grow up, when they become adult, how would they choose, how would they make choices for their life. And that's the story of these two twin brothers. So interestingly, they had the same situation. They had an alcoholic father, but one of the brothers, let's say brother A and brother B, let's call Steve and John otherwise. Steve grew up to become an alcoholic just like his father, whereas John grew up to become a successful engineer. He did not drink even a single, he never drank. And then the psychologists, after they both grew up, one becoming like father, other went in entirely opposite direction. He became a successful man where the father was jobless, alcoholic, and he would fight with his wife and whatnot. Then the psychologists brought these two brothers together and they interviewed. They asked, I forgot myself who was Steve and John. Let's say Steve, who went on to become an abusive. So they asked Steve, why did you pick up on alcohol? Why didn't you become like your brother John, who went on to become so successful? Steve said, what can I do? I saw alcohol all around me. I saw my father drinking it. I thought this is what life is all about. I picked up the alcohol, I drank, and lived my life. I didn't know this was going to happen to me. This is called as reactive. In case of a John, they asked John, when alcohol was present all over the place, when you saw your father drinking, why didn't you do it? And John said, I saw the consequences of my father's behavior. I saw him fighting with my wife. I saw him getting kicked from the job. I saw him wasting his life, and I didn't want it to do like this. I wanted to make my life, make my career, and live a life. So this is also in the field of psychology, is also known as fixed mindset and growth mindset, which is nothing but fixed equals to reactive and growth mindset equals to proactive mindset. So please remember, we cannot control the circumstances and we do not always get to choose what happens to us or around us, but we can try our best. If you can, please repeat after me. Who you are today is not who you have to be tomorrow. So with that, we pause here for our session today. So summarizing this session quickly, please remember leadership starts with a choice. So first part of discussion for us today was discussing stimuli versus response, where we talked about what happens to us and how we react lies our power to choose. Proactive leaders take charge of their responses. Therein I spoke about Arjuna versus Jayadratha. I spoke about Arjuna reacting based on chosen values, whereas Jayadratha, which is a reactive conductor, a reactive behavior, acted, what do you say, there's a stimuli and a reaction based on condition, nature like that. No thinking, no consideration of values. Then we talked about leadership in the three modes: goodness, balanced, thoughtful, and visionary leaders. Whereas passion creates energetic, but often over ambitious, stressed, and insensitive. They really cannot lead the team. Third, ignorance. If you have such a people around you, your life is doomed. And if you happen to be one of these person, or you happen to be of ignorant nature or dominated by ignorance, it's not a good state to be. Indecisive, reactive, and inconsistent. And the third subject matter we discussed today was elevating our leadership potential. So we talked about, if you want to change yourself, we have to give up two things: attachment to wrong things and aversion to right things. So first, cultivate a sattvic lifestyle, right diet, association, and mindfulness. Apply Bhagavad Gita's teachings to lead with clarity and purpose, which means first of all start reading Bhagavad Gita. This is one of the scientific concept Krishna mentions Bhagavad Gita. This is just the beginning. There's a lot to discover and learn from Bhagavad Gita. And with that, I will pause here. Before that, I would like to conclude with an action plan for all of us. First, reflect. Identify your dominant mode of consciousness, Vibhishan style, Ravana style, or Kumbhakarna style. Goodness, passion, ignorance. First, we need to become aware of it. Practice. We talked about changing your lifestyle in terms of your dress, your diet, choosing the right environment, choosing the right association. Pick up one of the habit and work on it. Third, lead. And when you become good at it, influence others with a balanced and purposeful approach. And to conclude, always remember, who you are today is not who you have to be tomorrow. I conclude the session with a beautiful prayer. O Lord, give me the courage to change the things which can and ought to be changed. the serenity to accept the things which cannot be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. With that, I conclude here for today. Thank you all for your kind attention. Hare Krishna.